Today on the News and Why It Matters, we have got to talk about the 2020 debates night 2, because night 1 wasn't insufferable enough. We've got Pete Buttigieg ripping conservative Christians. We'll get into that. And we've got Jeremy Dice with First Liberty with us to talk about a religious liberty case you have got to hear about. Obviously, a lot coming up. It starts right now. Obviously, a lot to get into here. First, we want to thank our sponsor, realestateagentsitrust.com. If you are looking to buy or sell a house, no pressure. It's just like, I don't know, the biggest investment you're ever going to make in your life, unless you're maybe Warren Buffett.
Right. And what will you do? You'll probably go on Zillow.
Yeah.
And look at a couple of houses and then just call the person who's listed below the house.
Yeah.
It's not always the best way of doing it.
No.
It's interesting because I think a lot of people go on personal relationships on these things, and for a lot of stuff you can do that, right? Like if you need a ride to work, that's a great time for a personal relationship. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in financial transactions, maybe a time to make sure you're screening through these people, know them a little bit better than the person you know at Starbucks.
Unless you're looking to get rid of a friend who's a realtor, and then you could use that as an excuse, but then you're out a lot of money.
That's true.
So it depends on how bad the friend is.
Yes.
It may be worth it.
It's true. It's fair. But they go through all the sorting process for you, so you don't actually have to think about it. It's realestateagentsitrust.com. It's Glenn's company. I don't know if that's selling you or if you're like, all right, forget this. I was about to go there, and now, but no, yeah, it's Glenn's company. He took a lot of time putting this together and has a great team. So it's really great. Realestateagentsitrust.com.
All right, Stu, I know we're going to get into kind of a review of Pete Buttigieg and his comments, and then the night 1 last night. But you're covering night 2? Should
we start with night 1 or 2?
Do you want to start with night 1?
I am fine either way. We can do a little bit of a preview here in a few minutes.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go over night 1. There was a lot there to dissect.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I was very happy for our own Sarah Gonzalez, the chief cheerleader for Marianne Williamson in America.
My girl.
She's your girl.
My girl.
It was fun to see. She did really well, actually. I actually thought her and Delaney really stood out as because what are you doing here in this round? The important thing is to understand what your goal is, right? If you are a person and you're at 0 or 1 or 2% in the polls, your goal is really just to try to get to that next round of debates. The next round of debates is a much higher standard. You have to be, 2% in multiple polls, guys, 2%. But 130,000 donors, too. So, it was a big moment for a guy like Steve Bullock, who had not been on stage at all. It was a big moment for John Delaney, who he can get plenty of money, but he does not have a lot of donors. He's been self-funding his campaign, and you're kind of in the middle of nowhere. You also throw in people like Tim Ryan and Beto at some level, Hickenlooper. These guys at the very bottom trying to get to that next debate, just because if you can't get there, you're pretty much toast, right? This is over for you if you can't get on stage, most likely. So I think what you saw there, I thought Delaney did very well. He's not aligned with the party. In that he's a little too moderate. He was talking about things like paying for stuff, not ripping away private insurance from everyone who likes it. These sorts of things do not play all that well. But there has to be somebody representing the quote-unquote moderate side of this party, which does not seem to exist all that much.
They let him talk a little bit this time.
But this was an incredible, it was a gift. Delaney is a guy who's been at 1 or 2% or 0 in almost every poll. He's been running since 2017. He's been in the race forever and has never had any traction. And they treated him as if he was an equal with Sanders and Warren for almost the entire first half of that debate.
Did you think it was interesting that he made the distinction between himself and everyone else, saying that everyone else was anti-private sector?
Yes, I thought that was big. And he leaned into it. I think it was a smart move by Delaney because, look, there are Democrats who do not want socialism. There's a lot of them. Biden obviously leading the pack indicates that. There are people who think, I'd like to have a democratic view, bigger government, more of a safety net, but not craziness. And people I'll draw a distinction between Delaney and Klobuchar. Klobuchar is the same type of candidate. When Mike Lee was in here, we came in here and we said, hey, who is the best on the constitution of this entire field of 25? And he said right away, Amy Klobuchar. She's Democrats. We're not going to agree with her on a lot. But if Mike Lee is sticking up for her view of the Constitution, there's something there. But she seems to refuse to lean into it. She's She alludes to her moderate status quite a bit. She alludes to, I'm going to be able to be more electable. Those things are probably true, but she didn't own it. Delaney owned it last night. He fought with Warren. He fought with Sanders. He said that their plans were unrealistic, that they were, way over the top, that people were in the middle of the country weren't going to embrace them. And I think he separated himself. I'd say this, if Joe Biden tonight can have the performance that Delaney had last night, this thing's over. Delaney will cruise to this nomination if he could have that performance level for the rest of this debate schedule.
And what I think was interesting was the way that the moderators framed the questions. And a lot of times it sort of pitted the moderate candidates and targeted them at Warren and Sanders. And so it sort of gave them something to aim at, which I think helped boost his points when he's able to draw that contrast. It seems like they were almost setting it up to where everybody else is pointing in at those two far left people and challenging these policies and challenging how do you pay for it. And you could see Warren and Sanders getting a little bit flustered at times, saying, oh, these are Republican talking points and we don't need to be worried about this stuff, like how you pay for things and how you fund stuff. But,
minor details there.
But I think
the budget.
It gave him a good bump coming out of it too, because now all of a sudden he's the only contrast to everybody else that's saying free, 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 free. He says, hold on, where are we going to get the money? Stop yelling about things, right? And that'll play well to his strength. Now, if that actually succeeds, you might be able to pull off some moderates in the Democratic Party, but also looking ahead to the general, they got to speak more than just to the left, and that may actually be a selling point to things. But as you say, he's got a long ways to go before to make that happen.
might not make the third debate.
Yeah.
The snake may eat its tail by doing so, right? I mean, do they want that to be the face of the Democratic Party this go around?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They absolutely don't. I don't think there's any indication they do.
I know, and the thing with a couple things working against Delaney. He's coming out of nowhere, right? And I think he did have a good performance, but is that going to be enough? It's the second round of debates, so it's going to be much less watched than the first round. Plus, it's the first night. So people who actually are into this, I think whatever happens tonight is going to overwhelm immediately what happened last night. It's the same story that happened in the last debate. So he's got an uphill road, but I think, when you're in that position, you have to look at yourself and you say, look, if I'm going to try to win this thing, I need to go for it. And I think he did what he could do. That's that's a tough thing to do. Where Klobuchar, I think, didn't. I mean, she does not seem to be able to distinguish herself in any way in these debates.
She doesn't leave an imprint. She's just kind of hanging in the background, and she's not making a splash to where you remember her when you think about what happened during that debate.
That's a bad way to win the presidency. It's a good way, however, to win the vice presidency. Absolutely. And I think that is really what she's looking at right now. I mean, I think her best path to the White House is with Joe Biden winning and picking Klobuchar, which would be a sensible VP choice. I mean, you're from Minnesota. Her electoral history is strong. I mean, she's improved. She's impressed, I think, much more than a Beto. So I think coming out of that from yesterday, you have the bottom, who can rise up from the bottom. I think Marianne and John Delaney, I think, are at least in that conversation. Maybe Bullock a little bit. That middle area is a weird one, though, because Buttigieg, I don't think, and I want to definitely talk about, his comments, which I don't understand. But I mean, you have Beto, who I thought was better than last time, but I mean, my expectations are so low now, he's actually exceeding them.
Texas is in play. I lost it, but Texas is in play.
Well, and he was to brag about your campaign and how well you ran it.
Yeah.
I guess it wasn't that great, was it? I
know. It really is fascinating. He is bizarre.
That was the great second place finisher.
Yeah. But I mean, I really thought that probably even though I thought Delaney and Williamson probably did the best job as to where they were, that probably the winner of the night to me was Warren, because Warren didn't make any big mistakes. She had a couple of good moments that went sort of viral. And the bottom line is, out of that socialist wing, I just don't see how you can pick Bernie. He's so angry and terrible, and I just don't understand it at all. And if they run Bernie Sanders, I mean, he's a disaster. I think Warren is also tailor-made for Donald Trump, so it's very dangerous. But if you're going to pick somebody out of that socialist wing, you're going to get the same policies in a much better package, I think, with Elizabeth Warren, which is not a high hurdle. I mean, this is not a high hurdle to clear. I mean, she's not a good candidate by any means. But I mean, if you're going to pick someone who's a socialist, you probably go there. I just don't understand that if you're going to go with someone with that policy structure, why not just do Kamala Harris? You're going to get a much better candidate, and you're not going to have to deal with she is made in a lab to lose to Donald Trump, and that is not a good idea. But hey, go ahead.
Go ahead.
She's keeping her head down, and she's not making any mistakes, and so she's sort of just creeping up. That's how she's That's how she's surviving.
Yeah.
1/10/24th of a step at a time.
Slow and steady.
Aaron, do you find her to be genuine when she speaks? Elizabeth?
Sometimes, actually. I mean, you know, you may disagree, but sometimes I feel like she does believe what she's saying. She's certainly good at making it seem like she does, and I think that's important. It comes across in a way that does connect with people more than a Bernie Sanders who's just screaming at you like an old man who's just
And
hates
pointing
everything.
too. It's very aggressive.
Yeah, he's very demonstrative, but
He's mean.
He is.
He's mean. He's a mean guy.
But he's desperate.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
really do.
oh yeah, because he's
Although I will say, Stu, I mean, he probably has a reason. I mean, not probably. He has a reason to have a chip on his shoulder this time around. You know.
Well,
I mean, he's going into it knowing that he was screwed the last time around.
Yeah, I mean, look, he lost by 4 million votes. Would that have made it? I don't know. I mean, but I understand that's certainly how he feels. I will say this, though. I mean, I do not think Bernie Sanders is going to be the nominee, but there is nobody who is going to come out of this with a bigger victory than Bernie Sanders. The man has dragged one of our two major parties so far to the left. They've turned into him. Whether he wins or not, he's won. Elizabeth Warren is him. Kamala Harris is him. Pete Buttigieg, in many ways, is him. I mean, Biden is running as a moderate in a massive expansion of Obamacare that is almost to the level of Medicare for all. I mean, he's moved the Overton window of our entire political system dramatically without winning, and that is impressive.
I don't think that's wrong, but at the same time, because you now have a guy saying, wait a minute, we're going too far left, I think you have to give some credit to the right of things as well, the conservatives here, to say they've stayed on that consistent message of they're crazy, they're going too far left. They know that they're going to go over the cliff, but they just don't care about going over the cliff. Yeah. Now that you have someone saying, and everybody's going, wait, that sounds almost reasonable. Well, this sounds familiar. Like, was that like 20 years ago? What is that? This is like this cool toy I had as a kid that I forgot about all of a sudden, and they want to go back to that. So there's you're right to say that Sanders had won the 2016 election because he brought the party so far to the left, both parties, quite frankly. Yeah. But now that you have this other guy now saying, wait a minute, do we want to go over this edge or not?
Yeah.
And getting some airtime on that.
It depends on how it plays out, right? I mean, I think it is. They could easily pick a socialist and lose. But that, I think, is okay in a Bernie Sanders worldview, right? Like, even if they were to lose to Donald Trump, and if they could get this party to be the party of Bernie Sanders in a long-term sort of way, that's his dream, right? The guy's like 600 years old. I don't know how many elections he thinks he's going to be running. I mean, he may be running until he's 150. I don't know. But like, it is that sort of thing where that's a dramatic difference. I mean, this is a guy who in 2013 proposed Medicare for all and got 0 co-sponsors on it. This is a guy who had people were mocking his ideas in 2016. Hillary Clinton was mocking a lot of his ideas in 2016, and now everybody supports him. It's a dramatic shift. It's scary because the bottom line is no matter how strong you think Donald Trump is, you put a one-on-one scenario with anybody, you could lose. Look at what happened with John McCain. McCain was going to lose that election anyway, but there's no way he had a chance to win. No candidate could have won in that election with the economy collapsing a month before it. Something dramatic happens, Trump could easily lose. And if it's Sanders, if it's Warren, we could be looking at a legitimate fundamental transformation of our country. And that's terrifying. It should terrify all of us.
Yeah. All right, Pete Buttigieg's comments ripping conservative Christians when we come back.
Let's do the continual source of sunshine.
Well, it's the chair. Pete Buttigieg last night had some really harsh, interesting words for Christians when it comes to taking care of the poor. Let's watch what he had to say.
Some of this is low tech, too. Like, the minimum wage is just too low. And so-called conservative Christian senators right now in the Senate are blocking a bill to raise the minimum wage when Scripture says that whoever oppresses the poor taunts their maker.
Mayor, thank you very much.
Aaron, thoughts?
He has this habit of whenever a Christian or any kind of Christian disagrees with him politically, suddenly they're not good Christians anymore. And so he's using a Bible verse to justify a $15 minimum wage or whatever the bill is. And the first problem I have with this is that it obscures the debate on minimum wage. It's not that conservatives think we don't want this higher minimum wage because we want poor people to stay poor. That's not what it's about. It's the fact that 1 million or more people could lose their job if this goes up. Businesses could not be able to pay workers. And so there's a lot of consequences to it, but he's framing it in this black and white way that demonizes conservatives.
And certainly Pete Buttigieg, who's pretty freaking smart, knows that.
He
Like, I mean,
knows.
this is just him pandering and bashing Christians, you know, to do it. It's
That's
disgraceful.
the frustrating part about it, is that he does know. And we've seen him do this with Mike Pence. We've seen him do this on other issues with his faith to weaponize it politically to advance his agenda. But the interesting thing is he doesn't want you to read the Bible literally when it comes to marriage. If you do that, then you're a bad Christian like Mike Pence. And so that's weird. He doesn't want you to read the Bible literally when it comes to abortion and the value of life and things like that. And so the selectivity of it, to where he just picks and chooses these times that he can use the Bible to justify something as strange as minimum wage. Not paying somebody $15 an hour is not oppressing the poor. You know, that's a disingenuous way to view it. But it's dangerous because this appeals to people. This appeals to people who want to be able to take things out of the Bible and use them when it serves them and not use them when it doesn't. And it's an appealing thing, a progressive Christianity that's sort of growing in this country. And it's effective. You hear the standing ovation he gets after he says that, but it's insulting to people who are actually Christians, who follow the Bible, who are consistent with it, to hear him do that, to hear him demonize it that way.
And who also give a lot of money in charity to a lot of organizations, just because they're not saying they're okay with the minimum wage still.
Yeah, I mean, because certainly the main point of the Bible does not endorse a minimum wage. It does not endorse a federal minimum wage at any point in the Bible. If you could show it to me, let me know.
He said it's in Proverbs. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it talks about the individual soul, not the government's heart. They're not trying to put a heart in the government to make it nicer. Like, it's about changing individuals and what you do. And that's what when they're talking about, obviously, you know, I mean, we all know this, right? They're talking about helping the poor. It's talking about you as an individual. It's not talking about a government policy. I almost feel like, because I mean, that's the more important point. I'm fascinated, though, as to how this guy thinks this is a good idea. Like, he is, because you're right, this is not once. He does this seemingly every time he's in public.
Since he started running, he's been doing that.
And he really thinks this is a good thing to do. I'm fascinated as to who's telling him it's a good thing to do. Because, you know, you're talking about, like, I think, like, he's getting, the only thing I can trace it to is, you know, he goes on CNN afterwards and they praise him for these points. He gets big points on social media. He gets lots of attention. Everyone on the left lauds him for these things. And the reason they do that is because they see Christianity as a tool to attack Republicans. They see it like they don't care if God says cheating on your wife is wrong, but when they can say, hey, that Christian over there is cheating on his wife, they love that as a tool.
Or on immigration.
Yeah, or an immigration, right? Like, where they think they can tie it. It's their way of saying, like, this thing that's important to them, we can use it against them. And I can understand why someone who's a hardcore leftist with, like, on CNN is going to say, oh, wow, that's a good thing. Nail him. We got him. Why someone who thinks they need to actually get Midwestern votes would think that's a good idea is completely on the other side of the world to me. I mean, the fact that Buttigieg, who's supposed to be running as kind of a moderate in this race, thinks that insulting Christians and talking down to Christians about Christianity while on stage, I mean, that is a fascinating thing. And part of me thinks that there may be a strategy here in that he's trying to goad some prominent right-wing Christian to come out and attack him on some of his personal life and all of those other things so that he could be the victim here, you know?
That's it.
You think he's trying to draw fire?
That and he's trying to point out the hypocrisy on the other side. But that's the same exact thing, is to say, well, you've got that little speck in your eye. Don't worry about this big log in mine. If you get that speck, that's a problem here. And if you come back to attack it, then then all of a sudden I'm the victim, and you can play that card as well.
Right.
But it's extremely odd that he would criticize folks for not following Scripture correctly, have all the positions that he has politically that are inconsistent with Scripture, and yet say he is a follower of Christ himself. Right?
Yeah.
He denies all these things, say they're almost bad, and I identify still with, well, why are you identifying with these things that you say are bad if they're in fact actually very helpful to us?
It's like I do feel like there's a political thing here where he's basically taunting, pick your favorite fire-breathing right-wing, Christian to come out and say something bad about his marriage, his personal life, something, so that then he could bring that to his donors, and we can get 2 weeks of a news cycle out of how this poor guy is being attacked by right-wing Christians. If there's a philosophy there, that's the only one I can kind of stretch it into, but it just seems like ill-advised. This guy could be likable, he's smart, he could actually attract votes from Michigan and Wisconsin, but if you're just continually insulting Christians and saying that their beliefs are are against their own faith. I mean, that is not a strategy to
It's
win.
like, if you're a Christian, why do you want to sabotage your own faith in that way instead of trying to unify, trying to improve? You're just dividing or attacking.
Yeah. Before we move on, now, while we're talking about debates night one, illegal immigration, I felt, was a really, really big topic last night. Elizabeth Warren came out and said, yes, I support decriminalization of crossing over. And Stu, what are your thoughts on the emotional messaging that they used to try to portray illegal immigration as just, these are mothers and children, and how could you not let them in?
I did like when Elizabeth Warren said she's seen cages for babies. Those are just called cribs. I don't know if anyone knows that. That's what they are. Okay, I hate to break this to you. They're in every every baby store. Every Babies R Us if they still exist around America. She's particularly bizarre on this one. I did like the idea that if the people of her heritage, the Native Americans, didn't have open borders, they might still be running the country. She should be, if anyone, Elizabeth Warren should be aware of how this can go. It's a problem though, I think, because if you're a Democrat, and again, I don't care if Democrats, I don't want them to be president, so I don't care. But if you are a Democrat and you do care about a Democrat winning the White House, an important thing is to not outwardly support stuff like decriminalizing the border, like giving illegal immigrants free health care, several of these immigration policies that are tied to this are polling around 26%, including Medicare for all and eliminating private insurance. Sanders and Warren support all three of those, and they're all underwater with Democrats, not just Republicans. So they're going so far left that I don't know how you tack back if you're Elizabeth Warren or Sanders. Look, people do want immigrants to come here legally, and we celebrate them. I mean, legitimately, it is a big part of our country, and I love it. I love immigrants coming here. It's like it's an all-star team. It's these people from all around the country who had the balls to come all the way over here and to go through this awful process we put them through to become citizens, and all of that is something that I think builds character, not detracts from it. But when your first step into the country is a crime, and that's the first thing you're doing when you're trying to become part of the society, I don't see how it ends well.
I was surprised that there were several people on stage who were openly making the point that if we give them this health care, if we decriminalize it, of course it's going to incentivize more people coming, and it's going to increase the problem. So there were probably 2 or 3 people on stage making that point, but to your point about the emotional case against it, it makes them sound like they're not compassionate or that they don't care about these people, and so it's an uphill battle. Even though logic and reason is on their side, the emotions and the compassion is not on their side.
Yeah. Jeremy, last word.
I think they're chasing their own tail again, right? You get some that are saying, no, stop, don't go over the cliff, and some saying, no, let us go over the cliff. Which one's going to win out?
Yeah. All right, we'll be back.
You should get some substance out of that too. I thought CNN did a decent job.
For CNN.
Yeah.
Before we go into overtime on the topic of illegal immigration, Bernie Sanders, remember, he said, a mother and child who walk 1,000 miles fleeing violence are not criminals, end of discussion.
That is fascinating. Jeremy, I don't know if there's a legal standard here of the immunity to crimes if you walk a long way. Is that a thing?
Go out on your nearest interstate and walk along the shoulder. And when the police call you over, say, I'm just walking. What? It's just,
I've been walking.
They're going to ask you how far you walked, though.
Yeah, exactly.
What if you walk 500 miles and then you walk 500 more?
No, we just need to go out.
He did say 1,000.
That's true. To be the man who walked 1,000 miles.
See?
Fall down at your door?
Yeah.
I can't. I'm